This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Do you guys want to dig into the chapter?
Sure.
That was a great double sure. All right.
But I mean, it's a good chapter, yes.
It is a good chapter.
Except for that one part, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it's...
Oh, what's the one part? I don't know what you're talking about.
You know the Spider-Man meme of
Yeah.
the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other?
Yeah.
Romanda and Lelaine.
Oh, I love that. I love the irony there.
Yeah, the perspective flipping back and forth is fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a chapter in which Egwene meets Moghedien, figures out traveling, collects Swan into her camp, and gets a lot of her machinations going with controlling the narrative of the Hall, and also with the whole Delana Halima thing that she doesn't even know she's getting in the way of, but she does lay the groundwork for getting in the way of it here. It's when battle begins. I mean, the Aiel theme through these chapters of hers is very consistent.
Battle with who?
With all the people who would control her and manipulate her.
Gotcha.
Remember at the end of that one chapter where Aiel don't surrender until battle is joined? And then she's like, well, I guess I'd better get to the battle. And then that's the end of the chapter. This is, all right, battle is starting. We're doing this.
This is Egwene's battle with the White Tower to become Amyrlin's seat.
To become not just a puppet.
Yeah.
So, chapter 37, when battle begins, and our symbol is the Adom. The silence was very peculiar, and Egwene did not understand it all. Elayne looked at Nyneave, then they both looked at Nynaeve's slim, silver bracelet. Nyneave shifted her gaze to Egwene, wide-eyed, and quickly put it on the floor. I have a confession, she said in a near whisper. Her voice never rose, but words spilled out in a rush. I captured Moghedien. Without raising her eyes, she lifted her wrist with the bracelet. This is an Adom. We're holding her prisoner and nobody knows, except Suan and Leanne and Brigitte, and now you. We had to, Elayne said, leaning forward urgently. They'd have executed her, Egwene. I know she deserves it, but her head is full of knowledge. Things we hardly dream of. That's where all of our discoveries came from, except Nynaeve's healing, Suan and Leanne and Loghain, and my Terangrial. They would have killed her without waiting to learn anything. I think I can stop there.
Yeah.
That sets it up. That
with the interesting ethical dilemma of how to get knowledge.
Right. Yeah. Is someone who has committed all these crimes, is it worth keeping them alive in order to pick their brain?
Yes. Just like Asmodean, except nowhere near as, what's the word? I liked Asmodean. I don't like Moghedien.
That's fair. I kind of like Moghedien a little bit more, but yeah, it's they're very much, if you think that Rand was wise to have Asmodean around, then you can't really fault the logic of keeping Moghedien around.
Here's the difference. They don't need Moghedien to stay alive.
Well, I mean, we know that they don't, but they don't know that they don't.
And they really do need her knowledge to survive what's coming.
Yeah, they're trying to anticipate dealing with the Forsaken when the last battle comes, and with dreadlords that have weaves that the White Tower has forgotten one way and another. Like, they are very much operating from a place of, this might save our lives. It's less certain than with Rand and Asmodean, but I think that we overcredit their survival compared to where they're actually sitting.
I feel like they get more out of Moghedien maybe than Rand gets out of Asmodean.
Certainly more on screen.
Yeah.
And Rand has a little bit of advantage because he has a Age of Legends figure knowledge in his head that he can tap into that these girls don't.
Subconsciously, anyway. Yeah.
So he is able to, and I do feel like Asmodean is more of a willing participant. Moghedien is definitely a prisoner, whereas Asmodean is more of he's joined because he has to, but he's definitely all in with Rand.
I would agree. They have a less certain hold than Rand did, and a much higher liability if she does manage to get away. Asmodean was very much had nowhere else to go. Moghedien has lots of places to go if only she could get that damn necklace off.
Right.
Yeah.
All she has to do is escape.
I think the girls take it for granted, though, that they have a really strong hold over her.
Mm-hmm. They're very arrogant about that. Way more than Rand ever was.
And they let a lot of information slip in front of Moghedien. She learns all of her secrets.
So much.
They let her out of their sight. I mean, Asmodean slept in the same room as Rand.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
although,
close
in
by,
fairness, I mean, Asmodean was, again, more in on a lot of Rand's plans, but also more tied to him.
And Rand was always a lot more suspicious. He never forgot that Asmodean was there listening, right?
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, like, when he left the building, remember, he, like, tied weaves of fire around the building so Asmodean could leave it. Like, Asmodean was a prisoner as well.
He'd cut Asmodean's tie to the Dark One. Yes?
Right.
Yeah.
That's the real difference there.
That and Asmodean had no access to the One Power as well. Like, no real access to significant amounts of One Power. Moghedien, if she could just get the bracelet off, has access to it.
Yeah, Asmodean was more in a, like, Leandrin sort of pickle, whereas Moghedien is more in a, Damani sort of pickle. It's very different.
And they're not actively breaking her the way you have to break a Damani in order to make them serve you. Like that, you have to use the bracelet to cause pain in order to break somebody. The potential is not enough. She was never a Damani because she was never brought Damani.
Except maybe with Egwene in control. I don't know.
Egwene makes a better crack at it than the others too, that's for sure.
Because she's been on the other side of the leash, and she's got the Aiel training. Like, both of those things make her pretty freaking, A, knowledgeable about how it works and what's effective, and B, hard enough.
Oh, yeah. Her Aielness definitely is what actually scares the daylights out of Moghedien.
And pretty much everyone.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, she came back a different person.
Very much.
I had an interesting question. The Adom that they're wearing, the bracelet collar, looked nothing like the Adom she knew far too well. Yet it's still described as sort of a seamless silver bracelet.
I think it's because the leash is missing.
Is that the only reason?
I think. That's what
maybe
I was
the
assumed.
form factor, like maybe one was smooth and flat, like the chapter icon, and the other one is more like a round necklace or something. I don't know. Can't be that different.
Yeah, I think the leash is such a limiting factor, and it's so symbolic of what it means to be broken to the demoniness, that to have the leash not there is a profound difference symbolically.
That kind of makes sense. It's just like if the necklace looked exactly like the collar of a Damani leash, and a lot of people here have seen Damani leashes. They brought some back with them.
Mm.
The Adom is like,
right, yeah.
There are Adom. So like the fact that no one recognizes that collar as an Adom is it must not look exactly like that collar. And I've thought about that before, and then I'm like, she must have made it more chain-like, or more, the form must be a little, or else it would be really way too obvious.
I was trying to remember, like, do we know how they made it? Did Elayne just create it herself, or did someone...
Yeah, Elayne created it off-screen.
With the bow, with the arrow, right? With Brigida's arrow.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
The silver from a very special source.
Right, from the same source Brigida's from.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to
Fitting.
agree with you that it must be a different looking necklace aesthetically, even if it is still basically a choker. It's not an actual copy.
And who the hell forged it? Who did they give a silver arrow to and say, make this into a necklace and a bracelet?
Oh, I like what Steph's saying, that she thinks they think the leash and collar looked like shackles, but Elayne made these more ornate, like jewelry. I am super okay with that headcanon. That works really well.
So then, I guess my only question is, who forged them? Do you think Elayne did it with power, or do you think it was like... Because she had some of... Because I think like a lot of the silver pieces she has made for her other Adom, she has made by local silversmiths.
I bet she could have, like woven a thread of fire into the arrow, melted it into an ingot, and then handed it over to a silversmith. Right. The arrow would have been kind of like an interesting question to answer, but yeah, she must have had someone make it, because she does technology. She doesn't do craftsmanship, right? With her ter'angreal making, she's not thinking about how to create beauty, though she does like crafting. I feel like what her talent with earth is not smithing per se.
Like later on, she gives a ring to Shiriam that morning had been like a piece of stone.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we ever see what they're making those out of. I'm assuming it was stone originally.
Yeah, she talks about that when she talks about first making ter'angreal, and how like the different stone colors matter, and they have to make it out of stone first, and then later they can make the I think.
A never explained thing.
That's a good question. I don't know about the colors. Are the colors there before or after she...
Oh, the colors are definitely part of the technology. That's not in the rock.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
Yeah, I
Kmart sucks.
think so too.
I got that reference. I'm interested in Chuck M's question in Discord. Is the Adom a weapon such that a full sister wouldn't be able to make one because of the oaths?
Ooh.
I mean, technically one man can't use them to hurt another because they're very specifically for women. Is it really a weapon? it's just a shitty piece of technology. It's not really a weapon.
I don't think it's a weapon. I think it's entirely it's a collar. It's a slave device. It's a capture device. That's not...
Right, it's violent, but it's...
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the intentions of the woman wearing it. Just like, if you think you're lying, then you can't.
If you think an ADOM's a weapon, you would make one.
Potentially, yeah.
So someone like Egwene would probably not be able to, because she would see so much violence in that she wouldn't, be able to do... Assuming she had the oaths, she had taken the oaths, obviously. But maybe someone like Cadsuane might be like, it's for science, and been fine with it.
Yeah. Cadsuane's a good one to... Yeah.
I'm going to push this forward because we are still on page 1.
Okay.
Keeping the secret of Moghedien is quite a secret to keep, and then they end up referring to Brigida, who Egwene knows about, but it's one of those secrets where the two of them are saying, Elayne's saying, hey, I know you know about this, but you're not supposed to, so I can't confirm anything. And they have this sort of side conversation.
Yeah, I actually put a bunch of question marks against that conversation, because I'm not sure that they're talking about the same thing. It's almost impossible to know. Because they're both not talking about it openly. Egwene thinks in her head that it's about Brigida, but Elayne never says that.
Well, no, she does, because she says, I may be able to talk later tomorrow, maybe.
About what?
Because that's referring to the fact that she promised Brigida not to ever talk about the fact that she knows Brigida. And then Egwene called her out on that in the dream, many, many chapters ago.
Okay, yeah.
And it's this whole dancing around the elephant in the room shenanigans where Egwene's just rolling her Aiel eyes, just this is not earning you any G right now.
Just feels like there's a lot of dancing around shenanigans happening.
And Elayne goes to Brigida and asks for permission to tell Egwene, and Brigida says no.
Right, and then eventually Egwene gets her way because she's like, but I know who you are. But interestingly here, she still thinks Brigida's in the dream. She doesn't know yet that Brigida is here in the flesh, which is basically what precipitates her ability to force the conversation. Is because it's no, you're in front of me. We're having this conversation. But at this point, she still thinks that Brigida's just in the dream.
Right, she doesn't know Brigida's been pulled out into the real world yet. That's the trick that she's missing. So maybe that's where you're saying they're talking about two different things. I think that might be what they're talking... She can't admit that Brigida was pulled out into the real world without admitting that Brigida was in the Terra and Grial dream, the Teller God first. So...
Right. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Brigida needs to stop being so proud and just allow Egwene to know things.
The whole violating the precepts thing, I mean, I get why she doesn't want anyone to know, but dude, she's... you broke the rules.
Yeah, you're committed now.
Yeah.
In for a penny, in for a pound. This is where you're at.
And she's still, being penny wise, pound foolish.
I guess. Yeah, very much so.
And there's the other secret that Elayne has bonded her against the rules of bonding before you become an Aes Sedai.
Good, yeah.
That's a good, yeah.
Good one. Hadn't missed that.
Which, I mean, technically Egwene is Amerlin, which means she's supposed to enforce Tower Law, and you're not really supposed to have a warder before your Aes Sedai.
She's technically Aes Sedai now, though, so they can
now, yeah.
And she does. Yeah. I think she shortly announces that Brigida is her warder.
Yeah, not in this chapter, but yeah, it has to come up soon, for sure.
And then there's the other secret that Egwene thought she was about to get in trouble for until, a few hours before this, which is they were pretending to be Aes Sedai. And Elayne and Nyneave follow into that as well.
Yeah, and that comes up a couple of times, especially with Nicola, who saw them being Aes Sedai when they weren't. And so there's a whole... I'm listening to a book ahead right now. Egwene just discovered Lan and gave Nicola and Arena the fucking rough side of her tongue, and it's glorious. That's such a great scene.
That's a whole other book away. Wow.
That's when Myrelle is like, you do know everything, don't you?
And Egwene just smiles knowingly, being like, "What the fuck I do?"
Yeah,
yeah, that happens in this chapter too.
Yeah, that's true.
And some of that was Suan, some of that was Egwene, but yeah, those two combination are a powerhouse, as we'll talk about.
Oh my god, they are such they're not a power couple in the romantic sense, but they are such a dynamo of awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when Suan decides to support her instead of work against her or try and control.
Right, which starts in this chapter.
Which absolutely starts in this chapter. Yeah, that's a huge, important decision at the end of this one. So we get this next conversation about tying everyone who can channel to the tower. And I think that is occasionally a controversial opinion. People think that Egwene may be going too far there. Other people think that's exactly what it would be doing. I was hoping to get your opinions on that.
I love it.
I think it was the way to go. I've always loved it.
But what about the idea of forcing, like, the Sea Folk and the Aiel, maybe they don't want to be connected?
Well, but this is talking about connecting them in a way that's actually culturally respectful and not super, like, ethnocentric and ridiculous. Like we see on the next page, like, no Sea Folk women bundled off by Aes Sedai, whatever they will. That's been the approach, has been, we're going to steal you, we're going to kidnap you. Like you're a Turong Grial that got lost in a basement and bring you to the tower. What Egwene's proposing is that every culture of women that can channel has shared mutual interest, and they should have dialogue around that.
And I like how she arranges that long term. She's able to take the existing agreements with the Sea Folk, the existing agreements with the Aiel, and then sort of bundle that all into the Dragon's Peace. I like the way that all comes together. She does sort of connect everybody, including the kin, back to White Tower. And I like how this is sort of not necessarily foreshadowing, but like stating her intentions, and one of her like main goals is bringing people back to the White Tower. Egwene's goals, she states and she achieves, and it's that's what makes her arc so awesome.
Yeah, and it would, I would think, put their culture on the path to becoming Age of Legends again, because the men and the women coming together, but all of them together cohesively, because they're not going to get back to that level of magical technology, I guess you would say, without them all working together. The tower is too small.
Yeah, Egwene does one of the most profound things she could do to strengthen the tower, right? As Amyrlin, to create these mutually respectful alliances with other channeling cultures rather than this imposing, controlling, like that was weakening the tower. Mm-hmm. That was very unhealthy for the tower, and she embodies the tower's needs so well that she's like, how about we treat other people like human beings instead of as inferiors?
And I think this starts to turn some of the premise of the books on its head a little bit, because when you start out reading the first few, the tower is this super powerful force that there's no cracks, but the more you dig into it, the worse and worse it gets, and the more fragile it is. Yeah. So not only has it cracked in two right now between the Aes Sedai, but the Aes Sedai are just a very small portion. Like, the number of wise ones are multiplied compared to Aes Sedai.
Right.
I think also you're like, oh, Moraine's an average Aes Sedai, and it's like, no, she's the best of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, you meet Moraine, and you're like, oh, this is what all Aes Sedai are like. And you're like, no. She's not very good about telling the whole truth, and she has other Aes Sedai flaws, but of the Aes Sedai, no one matches her. And so that sort of gives you a new perspective on how kind of shitty the White Tower actually is, when you're like, oh, it's Moraine and down, not Moraine and up.
Mm-hmm. The other really cool thing that Egwene does is she removes ageism from the novice book, which is really nice. The part where she's like, no, if a woman wants to learn, who are we to decide that she can't do that? I love that Egwene is such a powerful force for learning and agency and stuff. And she's like, okay, that rule is actual bullshit, and we're doing away with it, like, right now. I love that so much.
It doesn't really matter how powerful you are. Why are you being turned out? And we haven't met the kin yet, but it's definitely reflecting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had notes about the kin in this, too, because it's like, this sets up the kin so well.
It's like you start to wonder, where did all those women go?
What actually means, what establishes a hierarchy, right? Is it the one power? Is it age? Is it, like, skill? Like, and we have 3 different organizations that have each chosen a different way to organize the hierarchy. You've got the Aiel, who are doing basically force of will. You've got the White Tower, who are talking about force of the one power, and you've got the kin, who are, force of time, how old you are.
And then the Sea Folk also do sort of kind of like the kin in that it rotates by age.
Yeah,
right?
It's more of a cyclical. You're tied to somebody else's power, right?
Yeah, so you age in office, kind of. You're only allowed to get so senior, and then you have to start over, which is an interesting approach. But
yeah,
very
I always
much
found that
not
confusing.
the Aes Sedai would do.
Right. It's like the Windfinders can't acquire their own power. They can only help someone else acquire power.
Which is their way of keeping their power in check, right? Because if you're going to live 3 times as long as everyone else, like, you need to have some checks and balances to keep you from becoming a power-hungry despot.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of how the Shan approach it, right? They're like, you cannot be in control. So the Sea Folk have a much more healthy, like, on-again, off-again power dynamic.
Then there's the Aod.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They are not a good example. They're bad. They're bad. If anything worse, if anyone is worse than the Shan, the Sharans are that culture.
I have never... Who's actually in charge of the channelers?
I think they're in charge of themselves, which makes them much more like the Aes Sedai than any of the other societies we've discussed.
Because don't they, like, the Shaboa and the Shaboan were killed every 7 years by the channelers?
Yeah, Grandal thinks that they are in control.
But it's got to be the female channelers, right? Not the males, because the males are...
Oh, yeah. Because of the taint, for sure. So it's probably very much like the White Tower, honestly. A first among equals, and it's all vicious backstabbing politics and everything.
But yeah, I do wonder what the internal structure of the Aod looks like. That whole power structure of the actual channelers. How they determine among themselves who's in control.
Such an odd part of the books, the whole Shara thing.
Yeah, very much.
And I haven't read those ones as much as the rest. In fact, I've probably only read the last book one time. Like, I can't contribute much to this because I don't really know very much. I don't remember very much. Yeah, they feel very shoehorned in, and yet also like they were always there the whole time. I haven't fully made up my mind about them yet. It's like the problem with the map, where it just kind of cuts off the page, and what's over there.
Yeah, if you go to an Atlas of Ice and Fire, there's some pretty cool maps and some pretty cool rippings into Robert Jordan's understanding of geography. It's pretty awesome.
If I would say, I think the Aod were great and perfect. I think Demandred, the one who was weirdly altered in that scene.
Yeah.
And made everything feel off. I don't think Demandred was the same person we met as the cunning, calculating, very, very competent manipulator who's got his finger in everything. And then we have this guy who's just like on a battlefield ranting and raving, saying like, come at me,
right.
bro. Like,
I don't get that Demandred.
No, I don't.
All.
No, I agree.
It does not help explain the Sharans. Like, the Sharans deserved better to explain them to us.
Yeah. And he was built up through all these books as sort of like, oh, he's going to be the ultimate bad guy of the Forsaken. And
Yeah, then he just twirls his mustache and his sword, and it's just like, okay. Way to bring it back to Eye of the World villainy, I guess.
And I don't try to say this very often, but the more I read these books, the more I understand Robert Jordan's genius, the less I appreciate Brandon Sanderson's work. And that's not necessarily to say that Brandon Sanderson's work has gotten worse. It's just that I appreciate just how much genius Jordan put into it, and like how impossible it is for anyone to ever copy ever. There's no way. There's no way to pick this up, and
I'm
finish
nodding.
It in a similar style. I'm glad we got the ending we did. Don't get me wrong. I am super thankful to Brandon Sanderson for finishing these.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I am super angry at that fucking blood disease. For
Seriously, I think a blood disease took out Carl Sagan too. Like, god damn it, with the brilliant writers being taken out by their blood.
Way too young.
Way too young. Absolute nonsense.
I mean, couldn't he have gone Golem on somebody and just squeezed all the blood out of him and sucked it in so he could have, like, lived another... I would have volunteered. You can have my blood for the next 3 books.
Back to the books.
Right.
Next thing I have is Egwene sniffing because Sorilea would have been put out of the tower without ever being tested for accepted. And I just, like, power to Sorilea. Yes!
Yeah. When I was doing the research and looking in the Black Companion book, I read Sorelia's entry, and at the end, it's like, she went to the last battle and lived. And I was just like, yeah, of course she did.
Yeah.
And kicked some ass, despite
so many asses.
Well, I will say Ruark's death was still one of the hardest for me in the last battle.
Oh, agreed. It was so necessarily well done and just hurt so bad. I'm not over it.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to note is Egwene thinking about how many more Aes Sedai channelers, Aiel channelers there are than Aes Sedai, and how much that is because they don't let anyone die.
I've always had a hard time wrapping my head around how many Aiel there are.
There's so many. Well, I think it's because the landmass is so big.
There's not much difference between them. Like, the size of the landmass versus Ranland, and then in Ranland there's all this diversity. And the Aiel are pretty homogenous. At least that's how I picture them in my head. I could be completely wrong.
They've got 12 clans that all get into blood feuds over whose mother-in-law spoke to who.
I think has a lot to do with a genetic choke point. That basically all the Aiel were very closely related at one point, and so there's not a lot of genetic diversity among the clans. And so it doesn't take much interbreeding to keep them kind of, it's like the Irish, right? Like, look at all the redheads. They got nothing but recessive genes. Bottleneck. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
Thank you, fellow scientist.
Genetic bottleneck. Why is that a hard word to come up with? I'm drinking wine. There's a bottleneck right in front of me.
Seriously, dude. Get it together.
Yeah, I mean, even with the Irish, there's some, black-haired, blue-eyed Irish. I mean, they're not all redheads, and yet the Aiel, blonde and red, and that's it. They're all tall.
Even more genetically constrained at some point in their history than the Irish.
Yeah, but there's so many of them. And in such a hard landscape to live.
Yeah, there's one mention of a black-haired Aiel with the Shido, and she's... there's a mention that it's an extremely rare but occasionally found gene. I'm guessing it's because they picked someone up along the way. Kind of like how the Tinkers do, like in their time of travel. They probably picked up a couple of random people.
That's a good point. Yeah, Rand's like Shael was even though she technically had red hair, and she was a Westerner, so maybe she had, or there's other Westerners who may have for some reason gotten involved.
I mean, it took them 500 years to get between the breaking and the waves. That's plenty of time to grab a couple of random people.
Just a few
get
genes
some dark hair.
that might, totally.
Yeah, just a couple of helpful genes, like random dark hair, so we remember the 75th wise one that gets mentioned in book 12, because she has dark hair. Nynaeve's dress.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That she's wearing a fancy dress.
Yeah, she made sure to take the time to change out of Accepted's dress and into something that's more low-cut than Egwene ever would have expected to see on her, because Nynaeve likes fancy dresses. And blue.
I think we get a Lenny saying here, but it's not explicit. You can't put honey back in the comb, Elayne sighed heavily.
That's definitely Lenny.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then they talk about Rand's amnesty.
That's something that gives them all hives.
And that seems to be true for pretty much all the Aes Sedai. Is they're all like, oh, that's terrible. But they don't believe that it can be growing, so they just kind of ignore it.
So hilarious. So much arrogance.
Like, no men would want to channel, right?
It's like, have you realized that it's the apocalypse and the dragon releases all ties that bind, even the subconscious ones? Ya ding-dongs.
Also, it's the apocalypse, and we need everyone we can get.
It's the actual apocalypse.
It's like, yeah, some of you might go insane before the apocalypse, but we need the rest of you as weapons. Like, we need you to fight.
Right? Yeah, people go to war knowing that they'll probably die all the time. Like, that's not an unusual realization.
And it's clearly close at hand. I mean, how long does it take you to go insane? Clearly that's what Rand is betting on, that he won't go super crazy before the end.
Right, and some men are looking at him being like, well, I probably have the ability to learn, and this dude's going for it, so I can step up, right?
And if you think about it, Rand sort of puts a clock on the last battle. His life and his insanity, like the last battle, because he's going to be there, the last battle has to happen before he dies or goes insane. And so if you're like, well, the last battle has to happen before he goes insane, that means I've got a good chance that I won't go insane before the last battle either, because he's already been channeling for a while and I haven't. So not that it's that consistent, because it's the Dark One and fuck that guy, everything's random.
Right, but it's not like it's 50 years in the future.
Exactly.
And if he wins, maybe the Dark One's not around, and therefore maybe I won't go insane.
Right, and even if I do, like, might not even live through the last battle. Worry about going insane after, if that's still a thing.
Exactly.
And then Rand goes and does the awesomeness of cleansing the taint, so that way people who channel after the last battle and come to that, like, one day, Ashaman will not be destined to go insane, even if all the ones today are. So,
And Nyneave does that awesome thing where she figures out how to heal the ones who are insane currently.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's like, it's ridiculous how much the Aes Sedai write off the concept that men might bargain that the pattern will somehow make it all work out in the end and just go for it. Like, come on, you think men are stupid? Why don't you assume some of them would make this choice?
That's a good point. It's a really good point. The number of all I have to say is steroids. I think they're a great equivalent for channeling the one power for men. They damage your body, but it gives you a lot of power in the short term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never did understand steroids. That's true.
I mean, sometimes the gains are worth the short-term gains are worth the long-term impact, I guess.
So I just imagine, like, Rand has been on steroids for a while, and he just roid rages out every once in a while. That's sort of that's where his anger comes from.
Absolutely.
He's
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna be boxing the champ, and I gotta get big and swole, and I'm gonna just fucking take a bunch of steroids, and yeah, I'm gonna be huge, and I gotta be Quendiar, yeah.
Bruh.
And then he roid rages out on fucking Codswain.
And then she's like, calm down, cowboy.
Amazing. I want to hear Rand say swole.
Just Rand walks up to Lan, I want to get swole.
Show me your ways.
Each time a farm boy asks me to do that, I do one push-up.
It's that water juice? Yeah.
Marigon walks in, and we get our introduction to Moghedien and Egwene. They give her the little bit of the, hey, here's how we created Mirror of the Mists and inverted the Weaves.
Huge.
Which is big, they do it constantly to Matt in Abu Dar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just inverting weaves, period, is huge. Not just, yeah.
Absolutely. Inverting Weaves is absolutely huge. And we've seen Rand learn that from Asmodean. So that's sort of one of those Age of Legends things that's now our heroes know that they learned from the Forsaken.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do love that they can change their faces. I mean, it's something they were already doing in Tel'aran'rhiod, but now they can do it wherever. It's great.
You know, I was just thinking about how in the TV show that's going to make filming kind of fun, because we'll have a bunch of like random actors be able to be our big three in Abu Dar.
That's going to be so great.
Reminds me of Polyjuice Potion, which was always a delightful scene in any Harry Potter movie.
Yeah, totally.
Right, stress the actors, act like this actor, acting like that act that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, have you guys seen Orphan Black?
Yes.
Oh my god, when the one is having to pretend to be one of the others. Tatiana Maindsley deserves every acting award known to mankind. Like,
yeah, she's amazing.
Oh my god, the levels of character you could see in her, just yes. Would love to see that in this show too.
Right, because she has to come up with both characters herself. When it's like one actor playing a character another actor has played, they can kind of copy them. But when it's like, oh, I've come up with both these characters myself, I have to actually play one of my characters playing another one of my characters. So I have to layer my own characters on top of each other and make that believable.
Genius.
It's genius.
Just
It's
genius.
genius.
Or then there's like Altered Carbon, where like they create this character with multiple actors giving you insight into the character, like more or less at the same time.
Right.
And you get this idea of who the actual character is from all of these like different actors embodying it, which is a other kind of potential for genius that I'm not sure Altered Carbon hit, but that I really liked the idea of.
Second season didn't quite hit.
Yeah, no, it did really. Anyhow. It's the concept of what they could do with this in the show for Wheel of Time. Freaking awesome.
Right.
Yeah. And there'll be enough time before we get there that we'll really know the actors. Yeah.
Right. Their body language, their turns of phrase, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I like how we're all just like, and season 7, we'll get there.
Because that's totally going to happen.
Going to happen. Please, God.
Yes. It has happened. I'm just manifesting it now. It has happened. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills.
Fair enough.
Time is a wheel.
You believe in the static universe, that we're all just traveling through time in a predetermined world?
With respect to the TV show, yes, I do.
Okay. And
Not in
it's
the
already
rest
been
of
made.
it, but just with respect to the show.
It's already been made. We just need to get to that point in the future.
Exactly.
We need to believe.
I want to believe.
I do believe in the good show. I do.
The truth is out there.
Yes. The thing that I think is really cool about the Egwene-Moghedien interaction is that Egwene's time with the Aiel allows her to cut right through to the heart of what will actually keep Moghedien in line, which is the threat to her pride of like what with Perrin being like, I'll cut your hands off and leave you to beg. Egwene threatens like, I'll leave you with that face permanently. And she's not as proud as Grandal, but she sees the impact of being forced into this mirror of mists here and like immediately latches onto that as the actual way to mess with her psyche. And I like that.
She picks out regal and proud really quickly.
Moghedien talks, I think back when she was dealing with Brigida, there's a reference where she says, I will make you like a donkey and leave you that way. And I have to wonder if Moghedien doesn't know it's possible to use compulsion to make someone's mind turn them into whatever, you know, in this case, actually make her think her face is different, throw her into the world of dreams in the flesh, permanently alter her face, and then pull her back out. I wonder if there's some like possible way, or is it just more like leaving her shielded with a mirror of mist on her?
I mean, Egwene's a very unknown quantity at this point, and with the way that she goes through the gateway reveal, like she very much keeps Moghedien maximally unbalanced and not sure of herself, right? So maybe it's kind of figs and micing at her, you know?
Right.
I mean, like anything you can imagine, I can do better.
And, you know, Egwene's not full of shit. She is kind of powerful in the world of dreams. She's no Perrin, don't get me wrong, but she's powerful.
Yeah, she's powerful enough to make Moghedien not want to take chances because Moghedien takes no chances, and Egwene is clearly capable enough of making it a real problem.
Super Skylake reminds us she told Nyneave she would leave her in Teleron Riyadh as a horse and ride her around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just, you know, it's like when you're a petty, vindictive, sadistic person, you tend to not want to be at the receiving end of anyone else's potential to be just like you.
Your imagination is more developed.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. She knows it's possible to do those things because she's done them. And that's what actually terrifies her.
Exactly. Egwene just has to say, you know, like, you do the work to make yourself freaked out. I'll just smile at you.
Yeah, but she's really internalized the Wise One training with that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. She's embodying Soria.
She's doing it. Yeah, doing it unconsciously. I mean, to a point, a little bit of it is definitely conscious, but not everything.
I love the other girl's reaction to her just, like, walking in, intimidating the fuck out of a Forsaken, taking charge, and just being like, oh, I think this is the first time that everyone realizes she is the Amberlin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. This is definitely like, oh, wow, the Aiel internship really beefed up your resume, didn't it?
It
oh,
sure
boy.
Did, yeah. No, and that plus the gift of authority, right? Those two things combined, where it's like, graduating from Aiel camp means you believe in yourself, and then being told you have the authority over all these people, which means she believes that she actually has the authority over all these people deep in her soul.
Yeah, her self-confidence is huge.
Huge. And that's what everyone else is reacting.
Yeah, she's becoming more than Egwene Alfir.
Yeah, she's the Amberlin.
So badass.
All Ajahns
Heart
and
of an
none.
Aiel.
Yep. Soul of fire, heart of stone.
Her Aiel heart. She's grinning at Moghedien while just brushing past the ethical dilemma of you're an evil person and you know so many things. And she just smiles at Moghedien and is like, I'm gonna make this devil's bargain, but you put one toe wrong. One toe.
And then feeding off of the information of the IDAM, immediately knowing that scares the crap out of Moghedien.
I also love how she tests Moghedien and throws her off with this, the debate, or not the debate, but the exercise about how to make a gateway. How she, like, tests Moghedien, basically, and, like, reverse engineers that answer, and then is like, you will never know if I'm asking you a question I already know the answer to. Ever. So badass. It's such a boss move.
It reminds me a lot of when she discovers Lan and figures, like, Suan knows a few things and she knows a few things, but she fakes that she knows everything. And this is sort of similar, where, like, she doesn't necessarily already know how to travel, but it looks like she does. It looks like she was just testing her, even though she used the hints to figure out to find a little bit. And she didn't even expect it to work. She honestly didn't expect it to work. Like, she got a little lucky that she was clever at the right time, at the right place.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
she thought it was going to work a totally different way, but manages to completely keep her face stoic and like, I meant to do that.
I mean, she had the hint from Rand. She knew not to, make the gateway into next door and kill somebody. Like, she had, she's seen it before.
And she was able to use that bit to tell that Moghedien was at least telling her the truth. Like, if Moghedien said, yes, that's how you do it, she would have been like, you're lying. You lie, sack of shit. I know that's how will kill me. Right? Like,
it's a really good purity test for the knowledge exchange.
Totally.
Man, does it set Moghedien on her heels. I'm so confused.
I love
Like,
that
who
moment.
are you?
Right? It's like, wait, are you one of my colleagues in evil? Or like what?
And it's a valid question, too, because Egwene could be anyone.
Mm-hmm.
At least a Forsaken knows that. Egwene could be somebody else with a different face. Like, Forsaken can hide.
Although, I mean, I feel like Moghedien's been familiar with this group for a while. She knows who it is. They've talked about her. She's seen him in Teleron Riyadh.
But then she shows up with this weird knowledge, and it's just like...
Yeah.
Is everything I assumed wrong? Like, that question alone is enough to make her less of a threat to the Supergirls.
And traveling is one of their, like, I mean, top ability. Like, the ability to be anywhere at any time really is one of the things that makes the Forsaken stupid scary.
And can we just take a moment to be mad that Nyneave and Egwene, or Nyneave and Elayne, never thought to ask about traveling?
What else didn't they ask about? A lot
I'm
of
just
fucking
head
shit.
desking. Like, you know that traveling is a long lost talent. You have this myth.
And you know Rand's doing it.
And you know Rand's doing it. Why are you not asking? It's the simplest, most basic, obvious thing. Like, ah.
I think I've said this before, but, like, one of the things that I have to answer when a lot of people have asked me questions like, well, why didn't they do X, Y, and Z? And why didn't they use their power to and well, if this is true, then they could also use the power to do Y. And I'm like, they didn't think about it. That's the answer in so many situations is like, they just, they could use Quendiar in their engines and produce infinite power. They didn't think about it. They don't have the knowledge.
It's such a human thing.
Right. And this is a great example. They just didn't even ask about traveling. It's the most obvious thing in the world. But, the world's kind of ending, and they're still trying to figure out, like, how the basics of the power work, and they have access to this, like, infinite library of knowledge, and they don't even know what to Google.
I'm just saying, this was one of the few things that argument doesn't hold a lot of water for.
Yeah, it could be a tactic by Jordan as well. And you hear talk about movies that are set in present day, and they have to find a way to break cell phones. Because in a thriller, if the cell phone was working, everything would be too easy. And
there is a bit of because plot.
Yeah.
Well,
that's how I feel about Angreal. Angreal, because Forsaken should have access. Forsaken should be able to walk into the White Tower and go to any of the Black Aja and say, all right, give me all the Angreal you got in storage. And that should just solve the problem of the Forsaken not having any Angreal. Should be done, and done. Like, Ishmael founded the Black Aja. That's the first place he should have gone.
Yeah. So what was that about Robert Jordan being a genius?
Fuck off. Even geniuses. Even Einstein made some mistakes.
It's true. Newton believed in numerology. It's extremely true.
And, except for Tesla, I think he was he never made any bad guesses. I think all his stuff was perfect.
Well, Tesla's perfect. His only problem was that he had this weird idea that he should give his technology away for free and not be, an insane capitalist IP mogul.
Oh, I'm being a little sarcastic because some of his later inventions were incredibly insane.
What, the death ray was completely rational. I don't know what you're talking about.
Tesla went a little nuts at the end of his life. Just a little.
But he also believed in free energy for everyone.
He wasn't wrong about some of those things.
Not ever going to get over Edison being a douche. To Tesla.
To everyone.
But, yeah.
I'm very entertained that Nynaeve is extremely angry about not being angry.
It's so cute. Elayne, kick me! Curse this cursed block.
Like, I have a hard time picturing that scene, her not being angry. Like...
Frustration versus fury, I guess. It's a nuance.
And I really do feel like this is sort of the end of the swap in power level between Egwene and Nynaeve. Nynaeve, for the first time, has realized Egwene has surpassed her. Egwene is now the leader, and Nynaeve is now the follower. And that has been a book arc from when
Yep.
from when Egwene cared what Nyneave thought about whether her hair was braided or unbraided.
Yeah.
Do you think she could give a fuck if Nyneave said something about her hair right now?
No.
It's so
Right. Right? Like, this is a different... In the same way that I talk about King Rand versus Farmer Rand. Like, this is Amerlin Egwene versus the Farmer Egwene we used to know.
Nynaeve has yet to come into her own as Eyes to Die, but she's definitely been surpassed by Egwene at this point.
Yeah. Nynaeve started ahead, and her progression is a little slower. Her block is still there, you know. I mean, because she sort of started on third base. She was incredibly powerful, incredibly already able to heal, which is, you know, let's be honest, like, we've played some D&D, folks. If you have one person who can heal anything, that's a little overpowered.
It's a little bit OP, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emotionally, she's always been a mess. Egwene kind of had it more in control all the way along. But at face value, Nynaeve had her life together.
And I would say that Egwene had to grow up a little too fast when she was tortured for months by the Shan-Chan. You know, that's something that Nynaeve never had to deal with.
Right. Nynaeve's had far more pleasant struggles in her life.
No, she's had some struggle. Well, I was going to make a joke about sleeping with Lan and struggles, but
that hasn't happened yet.
That hasn't happened yet. Let's just say in the bedroom, the Sea Folk rules say that he gets to dictate what happens.
And at least one time he wouldn't let her put clothes on for an entire day, so we leave that as an exercise to the reader.
I have to wonder, if she walked out of the room naked, could she then put the clothes on? She just wouldn't. It's like, or would he be
Nynaeve would never.
Yeah, that ruins your authority in public to stomp out of your bedroom naked.
Oh, she's just two rivers to do that kind of thing. Like,
Also that.
Would that make her 4 rivers?
Two rivers. two
oh
rivers.
boy.
That's from now on, 4 rivers is my shorthand for stubborn. God, that person's 4 rivers. She's just two rivers.
4 rivers. When you're really in your stubbornness, you are 4 rivers. Take note, Super Chicken.
So Swan bursts in.
Yes, Swan. Who takes exactly one look around the room and puts together everything, which is delightful.
Right, yeah.
Like, what is...
She takes one look around the room, puts together everything, and Egwene looks back at her and realizes she puts together everything, and they're like,
Get out of here. Go away. I mean, she can't put together everything. At least Moghedien still looks like Maragon.
But she knows about Moghedien.
she knows who Maragon is, yeah.
Oh, does she?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's
Okay,
easy
I
for her
couldn't
to
remember.
Yeah, she puts it all together because there's very little that she doesn't already know walking in there. But she's like, oh, so we've read Egwene into the situation. Cool. That was going to happen.
Good.
And I like that. If you'd prefer I returned later when you're not, interrogating. Hello, wine. Interrogating a Forsaken. I'll come back later and you can lie to me. And Egwene's like, no, I'm not going to lie to you. Come in. We're all going to do this together.
And then we get this really cool quote from Swan. Sometimes knowing gives no advantage whatsoever. Sometimes it only means sharing the danger. And I think there's a lot of life lessons in that yes, knowledge is power. And as the head of the Brown Aja in the Discord, I definitely agree with knowledge is power. But sometimes knowledge is just increasing.
Danger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just danger.
It's a very important life lesson.
Knowledge can be very dangerous in an office setting.
This is the ultimate office setting, the White Tower.
It really is.
Game of Houses, the ultimate office politics.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not enough cubicles. Not enough beige. Too much white. Would never fly.
And then I like how Egwene sends Nyneave and Egwene off to basically say, go research lost talents. Like, how have you not thought about researching all the quote-unquote lost talents? Because that is exactly what we can quiz Moghedien about. So you do the research, figure out what they are, and then once we know what they are, we can ask Moghedien about them. We don't have to rely on her to come up with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She's already fantastic at delegating.
Yeah, very much.
And thinking of things they didn't in all this time. Because they've been so in it. Sometimes it takes just another set of eyes.
She's a good manager. Yeah. She's able to have that farther up view and be like, let me tell you how you fit into this the larger picture as a piece.
Strategy is definitely one of her strong suits, which is all throughout this chapter.
Yeah, even here when she is like, I could be using Nyneave and Elayne a lot more here, but I'm Amaryllis, so I have to do this alone in order to like make my power work. She's good at delegating, and she's good at knowing what she has to do herself.
Speaking of delegating, Inara, will you read the paragraph starting with Egwene embraced Saidar again? Because I think that's a super important paragraph.
Yes, it is.
Egwene embraced Saidar again, briefly, to slide her chair back into place behind the table, then adjusted her stole and sat. For a long moment she regarded Swan silently. I need you, she said at last. You know what it is to be Amaryllis, and what the Amaryllis can do and cannot do. You know the sitters, how they think, what they want. I need you, and I mean to have you. Sheriam and Romanda and Lelaine may think I still wear novice white under this stole. Maybe they all do. But you are going to help me show them differently. I'm not asking you, Swan. I will have your help. All there was to do then was wait.
Aradia, will you read the next one?
Swan regarded her, then gave a slight shake of her head and laughed softly. They made a very bad mistake, didn't they? Of course, I made it first. The plump little grunter for the table turns out to be a live silver pike as long as your leg. Spreading her skirts wide, she made a deep curtsy, inclining her head. Mother, please allow me to serve and advise.
The curtsy she didn't make when she bounded into the room.
Mm-hmm. And the way that she uses the exact same phrasing as the sitters when they swear to her, allow me to serve, and then she puts that little extra bit, and advise. Like, I understand that I'm your subordinate, but also I kind of want to be the ultimate assistant right now.
There's about 6 layers of this back and forth, and I love it's the forging, like you said, the power couple, right? Like, this is Swan being like, wow, this person has the authority, believes they have the authority, and has the skill, knowledge, and intelligence to be incredible, and they have me.
Yeah, we get a powerful mentor relationship.
Totally. And one thing that I think was really important is Swan had time to do everything she could to be reinstated as Amaryllis. And, like, she got her power back, she addressed the hall, there is 0 chance of her ever becoming Amaryllis again. And she knows that. And
she's a genuinely good person, and she's had this cause as her blue Aja her entire life to get ready for this last bottle. So what's the only thing she can do now? Give all the information she can to the next person.
Yeah, forge the best Amaryllis ever. Yeah, I love that.
Which is very personally satisfying as well. Like, there's definite benefits to knowing you're the smartest person in the room and have all this knowledge and can pass it on. Maybe not the smartest person in the room, the most knowledgeable person in the room.
Yeah. I love how Swan's like, I didn't even like you because I saw so much of you in me, but that makes me want to make you succeed the most you possibly can.
And I like how it's telling Egwene, I didn't like you very much, makes Egwene trust her all that much more.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, in that case, call me by my first name.
Yeah. And something I was thinking about looking at this section is that not very often in books that I've read do you get a strong mentor-student relationship at all. It's usually either based on jealousy or mutual attraction or some weird parental relationship. But this is a really powerful, wonderful, just purely mentor-student relationship. And it's between women.
Yeah.
This is a very rare scenario in what I've read, at least.
And not motherly at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Not parental. This is 2 powerful professionals winning at one career.
Listen, I think you got it wrong. I need to explain something.
Okay, so we're going to mute Seth.
I'm just glad you got that reference and laughed at it instead of being angry.
Yes, the tongue-in-cheek mansplain was beautiful. Ken, you shut up in the chat.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
All the guys are like, yes, and I'm like, no. I'm in danger. Yes, I am.
You know, those famous Twitter threads where the woman is just like, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And then the men just keep digging their own hole. I'm sorry, I really don't understand. Can you explain again?
Yes, quite.
I have smoked. Oh God, why am I so distracted, guys? This has been a weird night. Yeah, back to the chapter.
Are we into Spider-Man versus Spider-Man now?
Yes, we are. We totally are. Romanda and Lelaine are comically mirroring each other in this section.
Well, like I said at the beginning, I made a little character list, and as I'm like researching, I'm like, oh my god. I mean, Romanda's power level is the same as Elaine's power level. They're both 73, 74 years old. Like, they're the same person.
It's Van Dien and Adelius all over again. It's Teslin and Jolene. It's, you know, there's a bunch of like pairs of Aes Sedai that I honestly can't tell apart because they're so paired in my mind because they're paired in the story.
Theodrin and
Phelan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Romanda and Lelaine are the same way. It's like Pollux and Castor.
Yeah, what is the two kinswomen that become novices? Yeah, all these little pairs. Which one's which? I don't know.
It's a very Robert Jordan kind of thing.
It lets him get in twice the characters on like the brain space that he's taking up. He gets in twice the characters.
Yeah, and he's like, one of them's green, one of them's brown. I'll figure it out later. Yeah. It's like Aelfin and Eelfin and the Snakes and the Foxes. Yes. Like, he didn't tell us which one was which for like 10 books. It was very frustrating.
Because it's not relevant. They just go together. Whatever.
I never even noticed that.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that like early on in the fandom, we were like, we know they're Aelfin and Eelfin, and we know they're snakes and foxes. And we know one of them looks like snakes, and we know one of them looks like foxes, but we weren't sure which one were the Eelfin and which one were the Aelfin. And so, like, there was literally, I remember there was a line in one of the later books, where I was like, oh, now we know! I got really excited when I read it. I was like, now we know which one's which! That's very exciting! It was just, like, a one-off line by Matt. And, like, he's like, those damn foxes, the Eelfin, or Aelfin, the snakes, snakes... Are the Aelfin, foxes are the Eelfin. Yes. Yeah. So I think he said those foxes, those damn Eelfin. He like put those two together, right. And I got very excited that I was able to.
And of course, it's the reverse of what you would think: eel and snakes.
Yes, no. Of course, because Robert Jordan just has to be a genius about all these things.
Go take a long
Spider-Man.
walk off a short pier.
But yeah, basically we have them each hosting a bunch of sitters. And being mad at Shiriam. And, oh yeah, I could have had the Armerlin seat, but I didn't want that other bitch to get it. And then they wonder about where Delana is as they set wards against eavesdropping. But it's like almost a word-for-word rendition of subtly different details for the two of them. But it's mostly being mad at Shiriam and each other and a little bit at Delana. And not thinking about Egwene in the slightest.
Well, they're acknowledging that they brought up Egwene so that the other one wouldn't become the Armerlin.
Right, it lets you know that Egwene's read is incredibly on the nose.
Yeah.
She's not missing anything. She completely has their number.
The Lelaine Romanda scene reminds me a little bit of the Hoyd Odium scene in Rhythm of War, where, and I'm not, no spoilers, but there's sort of a repetition of the scene in the same sort of way. Having just read that, this sort of reminds me of the correlation there.
And then we flip to Delana, who is making both groups wait, because now we get the confirmation that Halima is the reason why Delana is so amenable to everybody's plans.
And shall we say Delana, Dark DFA, Dark Friend Alert?
Oh yeah.
So I wondered, is this the first time we find that out?
No, when Halima first shows up, we learn that Delana's a Dark Friend. Because she gives the hand signal that means Black Aja.
Right, and she's like, you're not Black Aja, and she's like, I'm Arangar. And she's like, oh my god, that's a name for my dreams. So.
Right, and now that I'm thinking about it, like, isn't the sign for being a Black Sister, like, kind of like the OK sign that's sort of like the white power sign? Isn't it kind of the same hand symbol?
I mean, yes, in fairness, the OK sign was very... I think it's like a thumb between your first two fingers. So it's like the I got your nose.
You're right. Yeah, you're right, you're right. I knew there was a thing with the thumb being very deliberately positioned, but yeah, I was misremembering. But yeah, so we learned that then, but we don't really know what Halima's there to do until I think around here. Here's when we start to see why she's here.
Delana, in the manipulating of Delana in the... but we don't quite find out that she's going to get close to Egwene yet.
Right, because Halima first shows up with the news about, or with the information being fed to them from Cabriana's death. Right, that's the first thing she brings. And then she's pushing Delana to just totally gum up the hall completely.
There is a typo in my book, and sorry, I'm having a coughing fit. I don't know why. But yeah, there's a typo in my book.
Oh, what's the typo?
Asengar.
Oh, yeah, it's Argar.
Wait, where is that? I'm like...
The name Asengar was never to be used.
Oh, mine... And this is also when we get really solid confirmation that Halima is channeling Sidene.
It's correct in my ebook.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out when this one was published.
Aradia?
Mine is Arengar, and I have a mass market paperback.
Marguerite posted a thing that the got your nose symbol is called the fig sign. It's a figus. The fig sign is a mildly obscene gesture used at least since the Roman age in Italy. It's sort of like flicking somebody off. So it kind of makes sense that it would be a black Aja sign.
Yeah, most commonly used to ward off the evil eye. Or to signify that you have an evil eye, I guess.
Or the dark one. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like, the eye of the world. I feel like that all comes together in a weird way.
Yeah, that works really well. Thank you, my brown Aja fellow. And Wikipedia.
Inara, did you have something you were looking at?
I mean, during my coughing fit here, I don't know if you mentioned it, but does Delana know she's a Forsaken?
No. No, she doesn't even know that Halima can channel at all. There's this whole, somehow she can tell I can channel, and it's like, I wonder why!
Because she's a male channeler who gets goosebumps.
And Donna is
raise the
convinced that she can
source.
kill her at any moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is, and that's Delana being smart, right? She knows this person has power. This person was in her dreams. The Forsaken knowledge is so far above hers. She's scared.
Yeah, she knows that, she might not be able to anticipate how she would die, but she would be the one to die. Do you really want to take that chance?
Wind blows over the wall makes a point that it could be, she knows, as far as she knows, she could be channeling true power at her,
Do the Black Sisters even know about the true power?
I don't think so.
Excellent question. I have no idea. I have no idea if the true power, if the TP is it known among the White Tower? Is that something that's...
I don't think so. I think it's only known to the Forsaken and Rand. Super Skylight is asking if Alviarin knows about it, but I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And I don't even think Tame knows about it, and he gets recruited to be a Forsaken. So he doesn't know about it now anyway. I think it might get given to the Dreadlords, in the last battle, but it's not knowledge at this
Allie
point.
Junior Forsaken, that's great.
Junior Forsaken.
Because I'm not even sure Rand ever, calls it the true power. He just calls it him. That's the other power. I'm trying to remember, where the name true power comes from.
Yeah, it's all from Forsaken chapters.
But do we ever see anyone on the light side call it the true power?
No, I don't think Rand even talks about what happens. All of those thoughts where he names it are all internal.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I don't think that anyone... people know... particularly people like the wise ones, they know that the Dark One being a source of power was the impetus for the breaking, or the collapse in the War of Power, and then the breaking. So the knowledge technically exists, but yeah, I don't know that there's much thought of it being akin to the One Power, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much knowledge there is about it. It's just the Forsaken have powers. We know that. Some of that's advanced knowledge, some of that's the access to the true power, some of that's access to Terran-Grial.
Yeah, the Dark One is power that is evil. Don't touch. That's not a really complete thesis,
Yeah, and they're even talking about not going into Tel'aran'rhiod in the flesh as evil. So
the devil of the gaps, one might say, instead of the god of the gaps. Dark One biohazard. I like that Super Skylake. But yeah, we've got Halima being very much we need to kill or sever Lorgain, which is an interesting thing to be concerned about. Obviously. She's channeling Sidene! We don't want Lorgain to say that.
That's brilliant.
He would be the only one in the whole camp who could sense her channeling.
Yeah.
She wants him dead because he's a threat.
How did it take me until right now to figure that out?
No, I didn't
know.
notice
You never realized that before?
I just always thought Halima had issues with Lorgain, but I didn't know why.
One of my favorite little bits about this thing. Yeah, of course. And that's the whole thing that, when she actually gets sensed in the forest during the cleansing, she's channeling Sidene, and he jumps at her and attack because... He calls her out.
I'm just a ding-dong that was too worried about the color of the rocks in the scene, okay? It just... We are at Swan and Nyneave and Elayne each running their own subterfuge campaigns against the various factions and feeding them all information about how they need to move with this complicated reverse psychology thing about how nobody wants to move.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's the 3-part reverse psychology, 3-prong attack.
I spent a lot of time rereading this trying to figure out if there had been a day passing, and I think this is still the same day.
Agreed.
So Elayne and Nyneave must have come back, and then all 4 of them made a plan and then went to execute it.
Right, because we also have the sounds of celebration going all day, and then this chapter ends in the evening. So yeah, this is all over the course of one day.
Yeah, it's just meetings after meetings after meetings. Those of us who have been in repeated Zoom meetings are familiar.
But yeah, so Swan...
That's what the White Tower is. It's a bunch of conference calls all in a row.
But yeah, so Swan goes to Lelaine and says, Lelaine, Romanda's being too domineering. Nyneave goes to Romanda and says, Lelaine's being too domineering. And then Elayne goes to Shiriam and says that Romanda and Lelaine are both too domineering.
I'd like to make a point about that last one. Shiriam is the only one who actually is like, oh, but we actually do want to stay. Because she's Black Ajah, and that's part of her mission statement, is to keep this tower in place and keep them from moving.
Egwene doesn't know why Shiriam wants to stay, but she doesn't have to know why. All she has to do is put Shiriam in a position where she has to move.
She has to oppose the other 2.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they seem to not trust Shiriam. If they've sent Elayne there the same way that they have with Leanne, am I saying the name wrong? Anyway, Romanda.
Liana is fine.
Well, there's Lelaine versus Liana.
Lelaine.
Because Robert Jordan likes names.
Gotcha.
Right. So they clearly don't trust Lelaine for good reason. They don't trust Romanda for really good reason. But Shiriam, aren't they supposed to trust her right now?
Yes.
Egwene is aware that she was raised to be manipulated, and she's aware of the 3 people. Shiriam in her circle is one. Romaine and her... I call her Romaine like she's fucking Romaine. Romanda.
I'm glad we both messed up on those names.
But seriously, in my head, she is a fucking head of lettuce. That's how I remember her. She is Romaine.
That's freaking beautiful. I'm going to make a picture of romaine lettuce for the Instagram post for this episode.
Now you can't edit it out.
That's amazing.
I completely lost track of what the hell I was saying. Romanda and Lelaine both are terrible.
Yeah, you were saying something about the Shiriam versus Romanda Lelaine situation.
Oh, that they all have their little circles of Aes Sedai who are supporting them, who are trying to manipulate them in their own unique way. And, we talked about how she can be pulled by whichever one in whatever direction, but they all want her to stay. And so in order to get them to move, she has to convince them that the other 2 want her to stay. And then the only way they can get power is by pulling in the other direction. And then she gets all 3 of them to pull in the same direction. It's a brilliant set of manipulation, assuming it works.
Mm-hmm. I honestly find it a little bit disappointing that these 3 far older, far more politically savvy women are all so blind to this strategy.
We talked about that a little bit in the past. The way that, honestly, the fact that no one remembers that Swan and Leanne were manipulative best buddies seems a little sketchy as well.
Yes, very similar, what the fuck sort of thoughts.
It is sketchy, because in the companion it says that Lelaine was friends with Swan before she was Amyrlin as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like they were their own little group.
And yet somehow they just forget. Women who are expecting to live 200 years let a mere 20 go by and forget everything they know about personal relationships between these women. Really? So same thing here. It's Swan is advising Egwene, and she's doing what is both brilliant and obvious by pitting these 3 factions together, and none of the 3 factions even once stopped to think, hey, that's the oldest trick in the book.
Well, I mean, maybe it's like when someone becomes an executive, it completely cuts them off from friendships that they may have had in a workplace. And by becoming Amyrlin, Swan is set apart But Lyanna was her keeper, so again, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. There's no explanation.
Maybe it's just the part where it's the end of the world and they have a lot of balls in the air and it's just a lot to keep track of.
Or maybe they were never that smart to begin with. That's part of the reason why the White Tower is deteriorated. They've taken out all the intelligent quality people.
But that's
They just weren't powerful enough.
depressingly likely.
Leaning forward, Egwene rested her arms along the sides of the copper tub and let Shessa's chatter flow over her as the woman scrubbed her back. She had dreamed of a real bath, but actually sitting in the soapy water, scented with a floral oil, felt strange after Aiel's sweat tents. She had taken her first step as Amerlin, marshaled her outnumbered army, and begun her attack. She remembered hearing Ruark say once that when battle began, a battle leader no longer had any real control of events. Now, all she could do was wait. Even so, she said softly, I think the wise ones would be proud.
Absolutely they would be. Absolutely.
I love it when she reunites with them.
Oh, that's such a nice scene. Again, more of that really unusual mentor student relationship with powerful women that's not messy and weird.
And she's repeating the need to wait, like when she confronted Swan as well. That is definitely something she learned from the wise ones.
Mm-hmm.
The power of just sitting and letting things unfold.
Power of silence.
I was going to say that. It went right out of my mouth.
Yeah, it's...
Like what they do to poor Avienda.
Yeah, totally. No, Robert Jordan believed in that. He gives us many examples of how valuable that
Read
is.
and find out.
Yeah. Yeah, also the Rafo thing, definitely. Okay, recording is on. So, this story. So, you know how, like, the Dusty Wheel did the Winter's Dragon, like, they cut it into something that was actually good?
Yeah.
So, my mom has this obsession with Clancy Brown, the actor, and one of his earliest films is this movie called The Bride, which is about the Bride of Frankenstein, and it's really bad, and it's full of a lot of people who don't realize that they're in a really bad movie, and it's amazing. But it's got a bunch of, like, horror elements that my mom absolutely hates, and she really only likes the subplot following Clancy Brown and David Rappaport as they go on this adventure, and there's this whole other subplot with Jennifer Beal and Sting that's like, ugh. So I took a cue from the Dusty Wheel and have cut a hour and 10-minute version that barely has Sting and Jennifer Beal in it at all.
Nice.
Has none of this other crap. Has, like, all these scenes that my mom just absolutely hates and stuff just cut out. And it's just this cute little hour-long version that's basically just Clancy Brown and David Rappaport running around having bizarre circus adventures in wherever that's set. I should know because I was just editing it. But that's what I've been doing lately, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
That's fantastic.
What software have you been using to do the editing?
Reaper can do video. Pretty simple video editing, but since I'm just cutting the sound and the video, like, really simply, not doing a lot of effects. And, like, I've had to do things where, like, I cut the video together and then had to bring in different parts of the soundtrack. So, like, I had to export just the audio. Yeah, my knowledge with how to do podcast editing came in super handy.
Nice. No, that's actually really cool that those skills have applied.
Yeah, it's an incredibly useful skill I never knew I needed.
Does she know that you're doing it?
Yeah, she does.
How are you, how is she watching it?
Well, I'm probably just going to export it, like, onto a thumb drive, just as an MP4, and just give it to her, because it's, like, obviously super inappropriate to steal a movie and re-edit it and then distribute it. That's obviously very illegal, but, you know, for her, just throw it into one of the bazillion thumb drives I have laying around.
It was during the dark years of my life where, in hindsight, I'm like, I got so obsessed with the internet and just, like, talking to people and stuff on the, like, chat rooms and things, I didn't consume much media at all. Like, movies, TV, there's this weird gap in, like, around that time period, right after I finished college.
I had a similar gap right after college where I was just like, I had to figure out life, and I couldn't deal with this, like, fictional world because I was do things like navigate a city and pay rent and
Yeah.
I had so many friends and I was drinking so much and like I was going places. Life was new and shiny. Now I'm just like, oh god, get me back into the fantasy world, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Distraction? Yes. Check.
Yes. But I do remember there was definitely a period of time from like for me like 2004 to like 2010ish where I had to like go back and sort of like reacquire all the media that I had missed and like figure out like okay, what do I actually want to see from that time? And there's still big holes that I never really figured out how to fill.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine's like 99 to 2003, something like that. Yeah. I got married in there. Don't remember planning my wedding. It's really weird.
That's crazy. Did it just happen really quickly, or is it just like you were so stressed and stuff that you don't remember the planning?
I think it's a bit of both. I was engaged for 2 years, so it wasn't like we rushed or anything. But I got married in a different city from where I was living, so I had to lean on relatives a lot. So they did a lot of the legwork. So I was just sort of like, I like those flowers. I like that cake. Go figure it out for me. Which I'm like, how entitled was I? What is this little 23-year-old thinking? But yeah, I look back and I'm like, oof.
At least you weren't a bridezilla, I guess.
No, I can't imagine myself today. I would have been like so like obsessed with all the details. But guess not back then.
No, I figure if I pledge right now that I will never get married, it'll happen next week. So I'll avoid that.
Now that'll be a story.
Yeah.
It would make a really good podcast episode, in fairness.
That would make an excellent, yes, yeah.
I met someone and got married in a week.
Right. Man, now I'm thinking about, like, how would I turn the podcast into a proposal? And that seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no. It's like put it in the podcast and have them listen to it, and, like, go down on one knee in the background. That's weird.
I've heard that in other podcasts.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like a great idea. The time lag.
Right. Right, yeah, because then it's out. And then, like, what if she's like, oh, I don't want to listen to it right now? And you're like, please.
Yeah, exactly. The Jumbotron proposal. And my brother and me, that was the one. They used to sell, like, a Jumbotron type thing where you could have them say whatever. And people would do proposals on that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But, yeah.
I mean, the idea of public pressure.
And they sold them, like, a year out. Mm-hmm.
Anytime you're like hitting someone with public pressure when you're asking them like a major life-changing question, that's just wrong, in my opinion.
You gotta be super confident.
Yeah, that's gotta be like either that's something you have discussed with that person ahead of time, and they kind of are in on it and know that even if they don't know the specifics, they know something big is gonna happen. Like that's about the only way I would be like pro some sort of big proposal like that. But I mean, in general, like I assume I'm gonna fuck up if I ever propose to somebody, it's gonna be like, do you wanna?
Ours was super planned out and so low-key. It was just in our own house over dinner. We both knew it was going to happen that day. I had picked the ring. Like
that seems the healthy way to have a proposal.
I hope so. We're still married, so
yeah. The right. The unhealthy way is like the movie way, where it's like, oh my god, I'm going to spring this on her early on in our relationship, and we haven't really talked about it in a big public space in front of a bunch of people, and hopefully she'll say yes, and if she doesn't, I get to throw a tantrum. Yay!
Yeah. And we've never lived together, and we don't know if we're compatible or not. Like, I've had a lot of roommates, and I've never been compatible with any of them until my husband. It's really easy to want to kill the people you live with.
I have no idea.
Facts.
What you are talking about.
Why are you waking up in the morning at 8 a.m. and cooking eggs and I'm still trying to sleep? Yeah. All those really annoying things.
Yeah, Brandon and I got engaged really early on in our relationship, but just to each other, and like didn't make a big deal out of it, and then lived together for 2 years before we even brought up the concept with anybody else. So it was like, definitely a long try before you buy, but we were kind of looking at each other like, this is a thing, isn't it? Yeah, this is a thing. Okay, we're just gonna acknowledge that's a thing.
Yeah, we definitely started talking about marriage really early and then waited to get engaged, but we were living together for a couple of years before we got engaged.
Insane.
Yes.
I was also really young, so another reason why we could have conversations between ourselves that were not being shared with my parents.
Yeah.
I do feel like there's like this opportunity to get married very young that I missed out on. like a lot of people took that like off ramp.
It's pretty rare, though. I mean, I was 24, and that's still pretty young.
Yeah, totally. No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's like, but there was a cohort of people who sort of like early-ish 20s, early to mid 20s, just went ahead and were like, "Yep, I found somebody. I'm getting married, and this is getting my life started." And I'm like, "Dang, that sounds nice." I was still trying to figure out who the hell I was, and like the idea of being with someone permanently at that time in my life was like I just didn't know myself well enough to make that kind of commitment. You know, I could date and I could be like, "Yeah, I'll be with you for now, for who I am." Right now, but I am not finished, man. I am still baking. I have a lot of gooey centers going on here, so like
I think a lot of people in their 20s don't realize that, and then in their 30s they do. So maybe that's why marriages kind of start to slow down.
Possibly, yeah. And I think marriages slow down because financially our generation is fucked. But that's a whole different discussion.
I'm very lucky, just tail end Gen X.
Yeah, and you just got me beat out on the Gen X. I'm just at the top of the millennial scale, and like I feel like if I'd had advanced warning, there's like my grade was sort of half and half. Like half the people kind of jumped into the Gen X, and about half the people ended up in the millennial. Can't
they tell you that when you're 5 years old, you're on the cusp of a generation, and you need to get working faster?
They really don't. Nope.
The markets are going to crash in 2000. If you don't have a job by then, you're fucked.
Right. Let me tell you, graduating from high school in 2000 was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Especially when and then like the market dropped in like 2001 for all the tech companies, right after I declared my major as an engineer.
Right. And I got my full-time job that I still have today in 1999.
Right. I hate you.
With the government. So, yeah. Really, really, really lucky.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. No, I feel like I've been in that. You know, again, not to get metaphysical here or whatever, but you know, I've had so many jobs in different careers in the last 20-ish years. You know, between programming to dishwashing to being a chef to lifeguarding, back to data entry and teaching high school math. Like I've tried all those, and like I can't seem to make a career out of any of them. And I feel like there's a lot of people in my generation who feel that way, where there's no real one thing that's gonna earn you a living and be your thing for the rest of your life. You're gonna have to do a bunch of different things.
Yeah, there's so much right now. So many options. It's almost too overwhelming. And it's not like, our grandparents or our great-grandparents' generation where they worked in the steel mill their whole lives,
No, I've worked in the data mills pretty much my whole life. Just like cranking out bits, one after the other, under the fluorescent lighting, stale air conditioning, air, and...
Oh my god, I never want to go back to an office again.
Cubicle walls. Oh yeah, no, fuck offices, man. Whoever thought those were a good idea? We have the internet now.
Yeah.
Seriously. Oh my god.
Roll out of bed 15 minutes later, I'm in my meeting, I'm good. Yeah.
I mean, I'm all about like post-work happy hour.
Yeah, the social aspect is missing for sure. I've tried to make a conscious effort of having more off-the-record conversations, letting the meeting go an extra 15-20 minutes, and trying not to feel guilty about it.
Yeah, and things like this where, normally I'd be like, hey, we're 7 minutes overdue, let's start recording. I'm like, no, let's just chill for another, 5 minutes, because there's no rush, and this is only the real socialization we get.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's relax and bullshit for a while.
I haven't seen friends outside the house in so long. I did a one sort of driveway conversation with a couple that we normally play board games with, and we're in the middle of a pandemic legacy game. We're never gonna remember what we were doing. It's been almost a year now. That game's trash. Well, I mean, it's a great game and we'll get back to it, but it's gonna be hard.
That kind of gap means you kind of have to restart.
You can't. It's a game that the board changes and everything each month that you play it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And pandemic too, of course. Yeah, so you're trying to save the world from multiple pandemics happening at the same time. And every time you play, you're physically changing the board. You add stickers, you rip up cards, which really was a hard thing for my OCD friend to do. But yeah, so you're permanently altering the game every time you play, it's really fascinating, and really enjoyed it, but can't replay.
Gotcha. Okay.
I just downloaded one of those things. It's a documentary that's been happening in Britain every 7 years, where they follow. At first, it was 7-year-olds, and now they're 63 years old.
Oh wow.
And it's the most amazing series to watch. Yeah. So they just last year, but I only just discovered last week that it had come out last year, the 63-year-olds. And they picked from like all different classes and stuff, so it's like really interesting to see how their lives change. And it was initially supposed to be like a high class versus the lower classes and a class study, but it kind of just became sort of a human interest thing to see how these people's lives changed.
Well, and there's actually a lot of scientific validity in looking at long-term studies like that with the same small population as opposed to sort of larger populations, but over a more shorter term. There's a lot you can learn about sort of your sample size and stuff like that. So
over time, studies are really hard to get.
They are very hard
Yeah.
to get, yeah. So those are always super valuable.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?